Hello, hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Motivational, known as WuRag, and I have a special guest with me today, and his name is Corey D. Jones. He's a professional speaker, and he also deals with trauma, and he's a coach. He is awesome. I've gotten teachings with him from the greatest motivational speaker in the world, Mr. Les Brown. And so he is a very dear friend of mine. And he's going to share with you and talk with us today about trauma, how people are dealing with trauma in their adulthood. So let's welcome Corey D. Jones. Hi, how are you?
Hey, Wu, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here and be a part of your podcast.
Thank you so much for being here, Corey. It means the world
Definitely.
to me. So thank you for your
Definitely.
busy, because you're a busy man.
Yeah.
And so this is a wonderful that we have you. So tell us a little bit, what was your childhood like, Corey, growing up?
Oh, it was very complicated. It was complex. I grew up with a single mother. I had a couple siblings that, we all grew up in the same household. And there was a lot of mental and physical abuse that I witnessed in my life, that I had to endure in my life. And we kind of had like a blended family, mixed family. I lived with my cousins. I lived with my uncles, my aunts, and that's where I started to see a lot of the negative and violence and drugs being sold. So I grew up in a home where it was a lot of love within the family, but there was also a lot of violence, a lot of trauma, mental and physical abuse. And so I can recall a lot of those instances where I just witnessed violence at a level that no one, as a child should be able to see. And it had a heavy impact on me, but I didn't realize the impact that it had on my life until I became a man, And so it was very up and down. It was, moments where they loved on us. There was moments where I just don't know if I was really loved and appreciated by my family. So it was just an array of things. But nonetheless, I know my family loved me. We just had a lot of issues like most families do.
Yes. Was anybody in your family addicted to drugs or alcohol or anything growing up, your parents?
Oh, absolutely. No, my parents, my mom, no, my dad, he wasn't really in the picture. And so that's not something that I really got a chance to see on his side. But my aunts and my uncles, they were addicted to drugs. To this day, some of them are still on drugs, and they've been on drugs my entire childhood to adulthood. And it really destroyed our family in a lot of ways. I've lost aunts and uncles due to drug use. I've had aunts be hit by cars due to drug use. It's just so much stuff that I've seen growing up, and it really impacted my family dynamics. It really impacted me. And I'm still, getting through some of those things. I'm still dealing with some of those things, but I've learned how to cope. I've learned how to get the proper help and the proper resources to help me navigate through life with some of the adversities that I had to face and a lot of trauma that I had to deal with. And so, yeah, it's still an ongoing issue, still an ongoing process with them trying to heal and get better. But we're here and we're doing the best we can.
Yes. Would you like to talk about some of the things that you do face today?
Yeah, as a child, like I said, I had a lot of things that go on. And when we talk about trauma, there's three forms of trauma. You have acute trauma, you have complex trauma, and then you have chronic trauma. And I suffer from all three of those. Acute trauma, is really just a single incident. Something happened to you as a kid, whether you was violently attacked or you've been into a car accident, something of that nature. That has happened to me. I was attacked as a kid. I've actually been ran over twice, my leg. As a kid, I fell out the car. It ran over me, back over me. That was something that really stood out to me. And the
Right.
complex trauma, is just this like exposure to very or multiple traumatic events. Witnessing domestic violence is one of those. That's something I grew up seeing my entire childhood. My mom didn't always make the best choices when it came to picking men, and my mom was very young. She had me at the age of 15 herself. And so she was still trying to navigate life. She was still trying to figure out how life worked herself. And so some of the men that came into her life were no good. They were manipulative. They were, abusers of women, and they just were cowards, and because of her poor choices and men, my brothers and I suffered a lot of negative consequences due to that. I can recall a time I would come home from school and there'd be windows bust out. There was mom bloody, black eyes due to her boyfriend's beating on her. And there's one night I'll never forget. This was the first time I contemplated suicide at 10 years old, sleeping on the floor of my siblings, and I heard a loud bang in the next room. And this is stuff that I heard before, it was something I was used to, but this particular time is a little different because I heard my mom screaming for help in a degree that I've never heard before. And so I tried to get up to go help my mom, but her boyfriend had tied a belt to my door and also to her door. And so I could not get out to get to her. She couldn't get to me. And I just had to sit there and endure the screams of help. And at that point, I said, I can't control the environment in which I grew up in, that I'm growing up in. I can't control who my mom chooses to be with, but I can choose whether or not if I live. And that's the first night I tried to actually commit suicide by jumping out the second story window. But my brothers then were there. And when I looked behind me to say goodbye to everything, I saw them standing there with tears in their eyes. And so it's like this voice, like the voice of God just said, get out the window. You can't leave them here to fight by themselves. So I got down and, I held on to them, it seemed like for an eternity that night. So I got to see a lot of that. And then, you got the chronic trauma. It's just like these repeated things that happens all the time, mental and physical abuse and ongoing sexual abuse. And I'm going to be honest, like I don't really talk about this component of it, but I was exposed to a lot of stuff at a young age, sexual things. And my cousins them introduced me to pornography at a very young age. It was something I never wanted to be a part of, something I never want to witness. I even told them, no, I'm okay. It's not something I want to do. And then they started calling me names. I had older girls when I was even in elementary school. They were in middle school. They would take me to parks. They would, lick on my lips. They take me to their bedrooms. They'll show me parts. And I was, like I said, I was in elementary and I was seeing these things. I had people that was close to the family would come over to my grandmother's house when I was there. They would take me in the closet and they would kiss on me and, do these things. And it was a lot of that was happening, but I never really spoke about it. This is really the first time I'm exposing a lot of this stuff. And so I kind of grew up very promiscuous or mannish, whatever you want to call it. And that was a part of my life. And so I dealt with all three forms of trauma in my life.
You have.
Yeah.
A lot of people, Corey, really go through that right now, and they deal with these feelings for the very first time, talking about it in public.
Yeah.
But it needs to be said and done because people are suffering right now.
Absolutely.
What would you tell someone right now if they're in this situation, that they're getting touched, or if they're watching their stepdad beat on their mother or their mother beat on their dad? And what would you tell these people right now if they're facing this right now and they're going through this? Even adults are facing this, the emotions, these feelings. What would you say to them right now?
First things first is the things that are happening to you or that happened to you that was outside of your control, it's not your fault. There's only so much you can control as a child, right? And then when you become a man or a woman, right, you reach that age, I would say really reach out for help. Find resources. Don't suffer in silence. Don't hold it back. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed about the things that happened to you, because it's your story nonetheless. And your story can save somebody by you speaking up. You know what I mean? I went years not talking about a lot of these things. I went years suppressing these emotions, suppressing these feelings. And then when I would respond in a way that seemed unnatural or normal, not normal, as a grown man, they're like, why do you respond that way? And I'm like, this is all I know. I had to do this when I was younger to survive. You know what I mean? And so as a grown man, it's not attractive. So get the help you need. Like, don't allow anyone to tell you, oh, that wasn't nothing, or it was this or that, or downplay what you went through, because your experience is your experience. And so just reach out, look for resources, seek out therapy. Find somebody that's close, that you trust, that you can talk to about these things, because the longer you hold on to them, the longer it's going to eat away at you. Mm-hmm. And you can't escape your reality, right? Mm-hmm. You can't escape it. It's going to always be there until you address it and face it head on. And that's what I had to do. And I got into therapy. My wife said it. She's like, a lot of the responses that you have are trauma responses. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hear that. I
What
don't,
are trauma
it's not a trauma
responses?
response.
Can you talk about that?
So, yeah. So trauma responses is the way you respond to things that doesn't fit whatever is happening. Right. So for example, if me and my wife get into an argument, my first instinct is to run away, is to flee. Right.
Mhm.
You got your fight, flight, or freeze. I always run because as a kid, I had to try to run away from these abusers. And so that carried on to adulthood. And so anytime I'm faced with some type of conflict, my first course or my foundational response is to run.
Yeah.
And she said, that's a trauma response. Right now, you're not facing anything that you have to run from. We can actually have conversations about some of these things.
Right.
And so I had to stop and think like, am I overreacting? Am I responding in a traumatic way? And a lot of it was, until I started speaking to my therapist, and they were like, Corey, you're not the same little boy that you was when you were hopeless. You was helpless and you had to respond that way. You're an adult now. You got to figure out ways to actually deal with these things as a grown-up, as opposed to how you did when you was a young boy. And so, yeah, trauma responses are real. A lot of people respond in a trauma response way, and we just got to work on those things. It takes time, but we can get there.
Right. Do you feel that most people, because they do face that in their adulthood, do they become addicted when people face that in their adulthood? Do they usually run to drugs and alcohol usually, or do they just kind of just run?
People respond differently to trauma. You know what I mean? But statistics say people are more likely to use drugs. People are more likely to miss work. People are more likely to become depressed. People are more likely to abuse alcohol. These things happen, right? Because they're trying to figure out the best way to cope with the trauma. Because a lot of times they don't even know that it's trauma that they're dealing with. They just think it's an issue happening today, or it's just something that's going on in the moment. But all the things that people have been through in their life that has gone unspoken, unresolved, it pours out in ways that doesn't make sense, and it doesn't always look good. And so people resort to a lot of things, and drugs and alcohol is one of those things.
Right. Yes. So this is a situation that a lot of people, they start contemplating suicide when they let it go so long without getting it resolved. Right. So what you're saying, that number one, first, it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, to get help.
Absolutely.
To speak about it, because when you speak about it, what are you doing?
Right.
You're freeing yourself from that. You're identifying with it, and you're saying, oh, here's where it sits, and I may need to go get some help for this so that I can get through this. Can you ever overcome it? Can you ever, a person that deals with this, when they're older, can they actually push through it and not think about it again, or kind of put it in the back of their mind, but keep pushing?
Yeah, it always stays in your subconscious mind, right? You can overcome anything you want to overcome. I believe what happens is a lot of times, and I think people may do this unconsciously.
Okay.
They hold on to the trauma and they never want to get help, because if you fix a person's issue, they no longer can get the attention that they want. And so they hold on to the trauma because it's a way for them to get attention. And so they use it as attention seeker behavior, because maybe it was something that they never got when they were younger. So they say, I'm going to hold on to these problems, and I'm going to use this to get attention. I'm going to use this to manipulate situations. I'm going to use my trauma to justify some of my behaviors that I'm displaying right now. That's not always the case, but I have known people to do that. And so you can overcome trauma, but it's a process, and there are no proper steps to overcoming trauma, right? It's something that you work at every single day. How do you do that? It depends on what you need. I can't give you the magic formula or the secret formula to overcoming trauma. What I can tell you is what worked for me is, one, I owned my trauma. I did not say, this doesn't belong to me. I owned it because it's mine. I own the fact that I didn't respond well in certain situations, and I needed to check that. I had to identify what were my triggers, right? I had to identify how I'm going to cope with these things. So what methods do I need? What measures can I take to cope with my trauma? And one of those things was one, speaking to myself about my own trauma. I had to introduce the grown-up Corey to the little boy Corey, right?
Oh,
When I
yes.
introduced those two and I had them have a conversation with one another, they both begin to understand one another, from the young me and the old me. And I asked questions, and I had to ask myself some very tough questions. And I was able to answer those questions. And then I started seeking out therapy, because a lot of things that I was doing as an adult stem from my childhood. I didn't recognize that though until it was pointed out to me about some of my responses and how I handle situations and how I responded to situations. Sometimes it was asinine, but that's all I knew, because I had to do that my whole life to survive, to protect myself, protect my family. And so now I just do things differently, and I still seek out therapy. I do it in multiple ways. So you can overcome it. You just have to want to.
Yes, I do like what you said. You said that you had to meet that little boy again and have a
Yeah.
conversation with him
Yeah.
in order to set the little boy free so he can move on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because they was never introduced. I kept the adult Corey from the little boy, and I kept the little boy from the adult Corey. And I said, I gotta introduce them to one another, because the adult Corey has some things to say to this little boy. Ask him some questions. And as a grown-up, I had to, from the little boy perspective, had to ask the grown-up me some questions. And like I said, it was interesting, and it may have seemed a little off, but it did wonders for me. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, why did you respond the way that you do as a grown-up, Corey? And then I will go back to the young me and say, because I went through this, I went through that. I seen this, I witnessed this. And then I just start having this dialect. And I came up with some pretty good things, and I came up with some pretty great solutions. And now I'm rocking. It doesn't impact me as much as it did, because when I owned it, I talked about it, and I found some help through therapy.
I would advise people to try that. That's very therapeutic. I
Yeah.
think that was amazing. And you can't go back to that. Once you've done all that, that was a part of healing.
Yeah.
That was a part of healing. And you went deep into those questions to that little boy. And you said some things that you had to say to him to get to this point where you are today, because this is traumatic. I've been through traumatic things. Traumatic is traumatic.
It's
And
traumatic.
it says, right. So like Corey said, you can get through this. You can get through anything. How bad do you want to? Because you
Right.
can, it takes work. This isn't just happen overnight and it's, oh, well, it's solved. This is something that you have to work at it.
Yeah. And I want people to understand too, you're not the only one going through something. And nothing in life is permanent. Your setbacks, your challenges, all those things are temporary, right? But you got to understand that life is going to test you to see if you're really made of what you say you're made of, right? And adversity does not discriminate. Trauma does not discriminate. It's not going to run away from you because you're like, I don't think I can deal with this. Or you say, why me? Like, these things are meant to help build character and perseverance and long suffering and help you push through these things, right? And I always think about that. Like, everybody's going through something in their life. Everybody is messed up and jacked up in some shape, fashion, or form. I don't want you to think you're indifferent because you've gone through what you've gone through. It's your story. And I found it very therapeutic to be able to touch stages, touch platforms, to share my story is therapeutic. So take your pain and turn it into your purpose and use that to set other people free, because somebody's depending on your story. Somebody's waiting on your story because they think they're the only one that dealt with what they're dealing with. And you never know who's dealt with the same thing. We are more alike than we are, unlike, and we have more in common than what people really think, but because nobody talks about it. Everybody's afraid to share their story because they don't want to be shamed. They don't want anybody talking about them or using their story as a weapon to, throw back at them later on. It's not about none of that. It's about setting yourself free and knowing that, yeah, I've gone through some things, but I'm not what I've gone through. I've grown through these things and I'm coming out on the other side, and I'm here to help share and spread the word to you.
And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you that Corey set those stages and is speaking, Tell them what you do, because this is what's so important, is that you wouldn't know his story if he did not share it with the world. And he literally we share our stories with the world. He shares his story with the world. Why? Because it can save your life. He's doing this to reach back to help pull you up. So you have to take what's in front of you, because you don't have to live the life that you lived in the past. Our childhood, we all have a childhood, right? So it's about overcoming it and still getting help when you need the help.
Absolutely.
Corey, tell us where you are today. Tell us about your life.
Yeah, so today I'm a 2-time business owner. I'm a 3-time author, well, 4-time author, actually. One of my books that I co-author is international bestseller. I have my own speaking academy where I, train people on how to, become a professional speaker, cultivate their story, overcome those mental and physical roadblocks, right? Help you get booked on stages. I got an article in the Huffington Post. Got Time, not Time, I'm sorry, CBS, NBC News, did some interviews with those individuals, Buzz Magazine. I have signed 4 contracts with 4 of the biggest platforms in the world. That's Motiversity, that's Fearless Motivation. I just signed a new one about 3 weeks ago with Motivation Madness and Pep Talk. So this is a boy that comes from, being a teenage parent himself, life full of trauma, turmoil, to a guy that's touching stages. And, I've reached over now at this point 1,116,000 people on all my platforms on YouTube. And so it's amazing what I've been able to accomplish. And I thank God for it, because he allowed me to get through these things so I can have a story to tell, And so now that I'm here, I'm going to make sure I use my voice to share my story with the world, because my story can help save a life. My story can help pull you up out of that dark place, help get you out of depression, whatever the case may be. Take what I have and you do what you need to do with it to help you live another day. Because right now, somebody's ready to give up. And hearing this may be that point where it's like, if this guy can make it through all that, and you didn't even get half of my story, you got a piece of it. If he can make it through this and become, a top speaker in the industry and some of these platforms, then I can do the same thing. And so enjoy it, embrace life. And I'm here to help any way I can, because this is a real thing.
Yes, you are here to help any way that you can. And you are the real thing as well, and doing the real thing. And because you do what you do, you're healing, because this is right. It helps you as a person. And so you are given some advice for everybody, for the whole world to catch this, to listen to what he's telling you. So what else would you like to tell the audience?
You're not your past. We all have trauma, but you're not your past. I want you to use your past, and I want you to use your right now, and I want you to change your life with it. Again, it's not the nature of adversity that's most important. It's how you choose to deal with it. Again, adversity is coming. Trauma is going to be there. In any room you step in, there's going to be a room full of trauma. But just make sure you got your trauma in check, and make sure you're doing everything you need to do so you can be okay. And know this, it's okay not to be okay all the time, but you can't stay parked in that position, right? You got to figure out a way to get out of that, put your car back and drive so you can get to the destination that's meant for you to get to. Because if you wallow in your trauma for too long, you're going to miss life. And you have too much to give to sit there and allow your trauma to rob you of your gifts, your passion, and your purpose. Work through it. We all got to work through it. You don't have time to throw a pity party for yourself. Have your 5 minutes and say, all right, 5 minutes is up. I'm moving again. That's what we got to do so we can get to where we need to be in life.
Right. Corey, so most of your days, you have more good days than bad days.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is a message, because what he's doing with his life and what he's done in his life, it's a life. I mean, a life that you can only dream of, but it's your reality. Why? Because he didn't give up. He's given back to the world to help lift you up. So don't miss out on your life and your days. Take your days and your life and do something with it.
Yeah.
Make something of yourself, because your life is a gift. Because see, we all went through something, and we're all still going through something right now today as we speak. We're still facing trauma and things. But the whole thing about it is to share your story and heal yourself and get help while you're doing it. And that's what's important, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because aren't your days so worthwhile? Isn't life?
They are. It's beautiful, you know, and there was no one else I can give my trauma or my pain to. There was no one in my family I wish would have took on my pain and my trauma. Whatever I went through was for me. You know, we can't always take the good. We got to take the bad in life, because that's what gives us a complete story. If everything was just good in my life, I wouldn't have a real authentic story, right? But because I got the good with the bad, and I took both of them and I mixed them, and I said, I'm going to use both of these to change the world, to transform lives. You know, that was for me. And I believe God purposely and specifically gave me the things I had to endure, because he knew that he gave me the ability to deal with them. Right. So I didn't wish my trauma on nobody else. I didn't wish my pain on nobody else, because there's nobody else designed to handle what I was meant to handle. And now I can use that stuff to impact lives across the globe. And you can too. Don't feel bad about your story. Don't be ashamed about your story. Your story is your story for a reason. All right. So own that story and go out and change the world.
Yes. Yes, because that's what you're doing.
You know?
And that's what we do. And that's what it's about. It's really about turning your story into a business, into a life for somebody else. And that's what it is. You turned your story into a life, into a business, into something so big and great and wonderful, and it's worth it every single day. Why? Is because you did something with yourself. You did something with your life. You did something with that story, right? And because of that, so many people can benefit from this. And I thank you so much for who you are. And Mama, yeah, she went through some things, but I thank you, Mama, because you have a wonderful son, woman.
Appreciate it.
Yes,
I definitely
you
give a
do.
shout out to my moms. Yeah, that's my
Oh,
joy. Just talk to
yes,
her. Talk to her
yes,
today. So she's doing amazing.
absolutely.
Yeah, she's doing
What
amazing.
a blessing.
Yeah.
So through it all, through the ugly, because we went through hell, right?
Absolutely.
You went through it, and you have to go through it in order to get back to heaven, to get some of this, right?
Absolutely.
And so because you did that, we want to thank Mama, because we know
Absolutely.
nobody's perfect. We know,
right.
But look at here. So we can congratulate you. So congratulations to you, sir. Because Corey, you are it. I just so amazed by your strength, your character, and who you are today. And I'm so thankful for crossing paths with you. So I want to thank you for everything that you're doing for the community, for the youth, for our children, and for the men and the women of this world, the entire world, internationally known. Yes. And so, and you're doing great things. Definitely, could you share with them your information, how they can contact you?
If you want to connect with me, my website is www.coreydjones.com. You can find me on my social media. Instagram is at I am Corey D Jones. That's Corey. Twitter, it's the same thing. Facebook, it's the same thing. I am Corey D Jones. So definitely reach out to me. You can text SPEAK to 54244. I'm gonna say that again. Text SPEAK to 54244. That's my mobile app. That's the way you can connect with me. And I'm here. Like I said, I'm here. Whatever you need, reach out to me. I'd love to help you in any way I can. If you want to get into this industry, you know, like I said, I learned from the best, Les Brown himself. And I've been rocking and doing my thing. I've been in this industry now for about 20 years. And I really took it professional in 2019, and I've been roommate ever since. So yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, 1990 something. You were still.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and you're young, and you have a whole life. I mean, just so much time ahead of you, and I'm so thankful that you started young, and you're just wonderful, and I'm proud of you. And
thank you. I appreciate you.
I really am. So thank you for showing up on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was amazing. I appreciate you.
You are welcome, and I'll be speaking with you soon. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're wrapping it up. Thank you so much, Corey D. Jones. Look him up and buy your book too, correct?
You can buy my book. I got 4 of them. So when you reach out to me, we can talk about that.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a good night. Okay, thank
Bye.
you. Ciao.